I feel like we're in the era of just like overstable approach discs. Like it wasn't even like 4, maybe 5 years ago, all we had for overstable approach discs were the Harp and the Zone. I would say the Pig, but that's more like a mid-range, right, Robbie? But there have been so many companies out there that have been making new approach discs. Like we got the Toro now, the Razor Claw, like they keep making a Tactic more overstable. We got the A2 and the Distortion from Prodigy, and we got the Sake Bomb Slammer and Culprit from DD. So it's about time that Latitude 64, who made the Harp and the Culprit and the Sake Bomb Slammer, to join in on this overstable approach parade. But are they too late? And like, where does this fit into all the plethora of overstable discs on the market now? Let's talk about it. So the disc that I brought with me today, I've got the Prototype Savior, obviously, and that's what the video is about. I've also got the Culprit, which is very similar. We'll talk about it, but of course I had to bring a trusty Zone. This is the Crystal Zone, the Aaron Gossage limited runs, as well as the Toro, Innova's new entry into this lineup spot. I've also brought the Sake Bomb Slammer. I don't anticipate this being anywhere close to the Savior, but brought it anyways. Then the Razor Claw 3, and we got some nice wind to compare these two. Then I brought the A2, which again, I have a feeling it's gonna be in a league of its own, but now the feel is very nice for like this 4-ish speed disc. It's nice and shallow. It has a little bit of an angle to it, but it still feels like that hybrid putter and mid-range type disc. And it almost looks like a hybrid between like a Zone type disc and an A2. So if you look at them both, this thing is not holding my bag very well. If you look at them both, like the rim is very similar to a Zone, like it's the same general shape. The Savior is just shallower and sharper. But then you look at the A2, and I could say the same thing about the A2. The A2 is like a flatter, sharper Zone, so a much faster Zone. But if I were to put them in like a spectrum to say like an Zone to an A2, I would put the Savior probably around here. I would say the feel is closer to a Zone than the A2, but it's like somewhere, it's like a hybrid of the two. But it almost reminds me of this other disc, like this Lucid X Culprit. Like it looks almost identical. Like when you put these discs right next to each other, they look practically identical. Like it's so close. Like if you told me, no, these are completely different molds, I could see that. Like the angle down here, which I think in my original video I said the Culprit had a micro bead on it, and it almost looks like it doesn't. Like it's angled right here, but I wouldn't call that a micro bead, but it almost feels like it has a micro bead. But when you look at the Savior right next to it, it has that same angle here, but like if you told me, no, these are for sure different molds, I would say maybe the Savior is not quite as angled here on the bottom lip. So, but that's saying like if Jonathan came to me and was like, no, this is absolutely different mold, completely new mold, then I would be like, okay, yeah, then it's probably this little angle right here is a little bit different. But again, if you told me that these are the same exact molds, I'd look at them and be like, yeah, you're right. They're same exact molds. Just the Savior is coming in the new Royal Grand plastic, when the Culprit is in the Lucid X for the Tour Series, which we still have at ApolloDiscGolf.com. We're having a sale right now. Check it out. And they also come in like the Lucid and Hybrid variants. They're not only similar though in the look and feel of them, they are also similar in the flights of these two discs. Now I know in the Culprit video I talked about how it's like slightly faster and more overstable than a Zone, and I still stand by that for the most part, but I found some weird intricacies with the discs. Now the Savior and the Culprit are definitely faster than all the other approach discs, with the exception of the A2. That one's by far the fastest of this group. But when you're talking about like the Toro, the Zone, the Razor Claw 3, this is faster than all of them. Those ones I would put in the category of like putt and approach type discs, or a very slow mid-range. The Culprit and the Savior are definitely more in the mid-range category than these discs. Same with the A2, obviously. But I found it weird because when you're throwing it backhand, it's it's somewhere in between like a Zone and a Toro, for example. The Toro and Razor Claw 3 are more overstable than the Zone. This one's like between the two. And the fact that it's faster is also really nice. But when you forehand it, and I don't know if this is because I've been throwing and forehanding the Zone for like over 10 years now, but I found myself getting not a clean release on the Culprit and the Savior. Again, that could be because I've been throwing the Zone for so long, but it seemed like this one didn't hold the torque of a forehand as well as the Zone. Take this hole, for example. This one's just like a straightforward forehand hole, great hole for like a Zone, Culprit, overstable approach disc. And the Zone, like, I wouldn't release it clean because obviously my forehand sucks, but the Zone would still, like, it would flutter but still hold straight and fade hard at the end, which is why I love the Zone. But these, like, they would flutter more and they wouldn't finish as hard because they wouldn't like stable out as fast. And I don't know if that's because of the rim feel of it, and again, I've been throwing the Zone so long, not these, or if that's like these don't handle the torque as well. So your mileage may vary on that one. And that wasn't the only time that this happened. Like, this was consistent across the board. Whenever I forehanded, I didn't forehand the Zone, Toro, or Razor Claw 3 very clean at all, but those discs masked that dirty release. Like, it stabled out, it's held straight, and it faded to the right on all of those forehands. The Culprit and the Savior both just rolled over. Again, I have no idea why that's the case. So it very well could be like because it's shallower, I'm not getting a clean release on the forehands, which doesn't make sense to me. So that begs the question, who is the Savior for? Now, I still think that it's a great overstable mid-range for those who like that, especially the players who like throwing Latitude 64. Like Latitude 64's pros, they will love this, especially those with clean forehands. Because like when I got a clean forehand off of this, that still flew overstable, fought the winds, it did everything an overstable disc is supposed to do. So like Kristen Tatar, for example, much cleaner forehand than me. There's a reason she's out winning on tour and I'm making YouTube videos. It would fit her game very, very well. And some people like that overstable approach disc to be faster. Like the Sake Bomb Slammer, the Zone, Toro, those types of discs might be a little too slow or short for your game. Like that was the case for the Pig in my example. That's why I liked the Zone. It was just a little bit faster, a little bit farther than the Pig. This would be the case if the Zone is that for you, if it's a too slow, doesn't go far enough. This is a little bit faster and still has that overstability and dependability to it. So it's just like a great disc to have in the arsenal because it's very fun to just throw full power when the Zone doesn't like going anywhere when you crank on it. And just those fans of Trilogy and their Supreme type plastic, this is just another one of those great molds in this great plastic. So if you're a fan of Latitude 64, this is a must get in my opinion, because this fills that gap that they didn't ever have in their lineup. Like they've never had a slow approach disc. Like they made the Sake Bomb Slammer and the Harp, but those were not in Latitude's lineup. This is now in Latitude's lineup, and they've filled that gap. Check these out at apollodiscgolf.com. We've got a sale going on and free shipping over $50 with the code TEXAS at checkout. These release at 11 a.m. today, so check them out, and I'll see you in the next one.